Imagine you're at the bottom, in the bronze rank, with one goal in mind, to reach Masters. Sounds simple, right? Now, what if I told you that you could only use Doug? Your goal just got a lot harder to reach, didn't it? Doug has been one of the most consistent brawlers at staying in the F tier competitively, and because of this, he is often overlooked by many players. But today, we are here to bring justice to Doug and silence all the Doug haters out there. So make sure to stick around because this is one push that you don't want to miss. Now, I've done a couple Doug pushes in the past, like when I pushed him to 1600 trophies, or when I got his mastery, but this is no doubt the hardest challenge yet. It all started when one of my friends, who was in Legendary 2 at the time, wanted to play ranked with me, and I said, alright, but I'm only picking Doug. Little did I know this would be the start of a generational run, a run that I hope can inspire many people to play Doug, and maybe even claim his spot in the S tier. And that's when we cut to now, when Past Arrow booted up stream hoping to get a couple wins with Doug. Hi everyone, Arrow's lawyer here, so unfortunately some of the following clips are going to be muted because Arrow is a big dummy and has copyrighted material playing in the background, but he'll do his best to narrate what's going on in each game. So for these first couple games, I was feeling pretty confident that I could solo queue, being that I was in the bronze tier, and well, I was correct. Boom, boom, boom! Get wrecked, bots. I ended up winning my first game, going 8-1 and getting star player. But if I wanted to get to Masters, I was going to have to push for at least a couple more hours. After powering my way through bronze by myself, I decided to enlist some help. Introducing Vic, a good friend of mine who's a great trophy pusher and happened to only be in silver rank so far this season. So now, with 2 men, 1 Doug and a dream, we set out into our next game, Brawl Ball. One of the modes that would actually be a little bit easier for Doug to push on. Many of the maps had bushes that I could use to try and sneak up on opponents, as well as many walls that I could hide behind to threaten approaching enemies. The rest of this game went smoothly and we managed to get our dub, but that confidence would soon fade when we ran into our first obstacle a couple games later. Heist. This was going to be one of our hardest modes to win, being that Doug has no range and medium DPS. On top of that, many of the meta heist brawlers are direct counters to Doug, such as Colette, Nita, and Jessie. Despite all these issues, I had a plan. I told Vic to pick a tank, and then I would focus on trying to keep us both all healed up until we could get on top of the safe. This plan worked surprisingly well, but we were only in the silver tier, so our opponents weren't very good. It's definitely going to be a lot harder once we face better players up in the legendary rank. Hi guys, so sorry to barge in again, but it says here in my notes that you're actually required to like and subscribe to the video, otherwise you might lose your next ranked game. Again, it's not coming from me, it's from the folks over at Star Park, alright? Do it. Like the video. After a few more wins and managing to get ourselves to Gold 1, we decided to enlist the help of a third friend, Sins. Sins is another high-level trophy pusher who happened to be in Legendary 2 when we started this push, which means the games from now on would be a lot more difficult, but we would get a lot more rank per win. It's also at this point when we decided that I would be the party leader so that I always got last pick in drafting. This was to help reduce the amount of times that I just outright got counterpicked. Our first game after playing in the legendary rank ends up being Knockout, which is not really the best mode for us, but it's not the worst either. I noticed that the opponents banned both Sprout and Grom, leaving Tick as the most oppressive thrower left in the pool. We picked Tick and Gray, hoping that our opponents would pick some sort of assassin, and they fell right into our trap. This was perfect, as I was going to be able to counterpick the Miko and protect my Tick at the same time. Using this strategy, we were able to keep everybody fully healed while we chipped away at them until we got our supers. Then, we were able to clean up the rest of the match relatively easily. The rest of this knockout match went about the same as the first, and we were able to get our first win in legendary rank. This gave us a whopping 398 rank per win, which would help us reach Masters so much faster. The next couple games went as follows. We banned Doug counters, and then we drafted in such a way to try not to make Doug a terrible last pick. And for the most part, it worked. And we managed to go undefeated all the way up into Diamond 3, when we met yet another obstacle. Bounty. This was, in my opinion, the hardest map we were going to have to play. Similarly to Heist, all of the meta brawlers are going to be able to outrange Doug, and I'm kinda just gonna be a sitting duck hoping that my teammates can get the win. But remember that plan from earlier that we pulled off in the knockout game? I think it can work here too. I see the opposing team ban 2 of the best throwers on this map, so I suggest that we pick the third one, Sprout. This time, it baited them into picking Edgar, which is great for us, essentially making the match a 2v2. But we still had our work cut out for us, as this was not going to be an easy game by any standards. I think now is a great time to also talk about how important Gray is in our draft. Gray in and of himself is a pretty good semi-assassin once he has his super, but he also allows me to not be useless on Doug. Once we have Gray portals on the ground, it basically triples my area of threat and makes it much more difficult for enemies to approach us. Also, with the recent addition of Gray's hypercharge, this allows us to get 2 portals through the later portions of the game, increasing our threat potential even more. You can see just how important these portals are through the last couple seconds of this game. Had I not been able to teleport back up there, we may not have been able to pressure them fast enough to get that last star we needed. Winning that first game of Bounty was huge, because it showed us that this was going to be possible. In Game 2, we did a lot of the same strategies. We huddled up and stayed healthy until my teammates could get their supers and go for a pickoff. That's not to say that this game didn't have any close calls though. Edgar finally got his hypercharge and decided to go in on us. I tanked a lot of the damage with the safety of my super, and then we tried to stay healed up as Brock launched his missiles on us. This was definitely a close one, but we managed to keep cool, stay alive, and get the win. I was then rewarded for my efforts by getting a nice 500 credits out of a legendary star drop. I was actually pretty excited about this because I'm getting close to alien fame, and every credit counts. In just the very next game, we were able to squeak out this hot zone win 100% to 99. I mean, just watch how close this is. At this point, I feel like we're definitely winning some games that we shouldn't be winning based on draft, and it might start to catch up to us here. Next up is another knockout match on Flaring Phoenix, and honestly, I'm not feeling too bad about this map. We end up drafting the typical Thrower plus Gray and Doug combo against a Lily, Mr. P, and Jean. And while we definitely tried our best here, the Jean pulls proved to be a little bit too hard for us to beat, and we took our first loss. But I wasn't going to let that one loss stop me from achieving my dream of getting Master's rank with only Doug, so we kept pushing forward. And just 3 games later, I found myself 1 game away from hitting Legendary, and it looked like this game wasn't going to be easy as we were facing Master's opponents. The draft looked like it was heavily favored towards them, and this was going to be a really hard game for us to win. We were going to have to lock in. I started off this game just trying to get a little bit of zone time without feeding them too much of their supers. But I eventually decide to just charge in, try to charge my super, and I go down. In this game, I was going to be heavily reliant on Gray getting his portals up so that I could actually try to do something. And lucky for me, by the time I was respawned, he got his first portal, which I then used to go feed. But on my next life, I was able to distract Frank long enough for my Gray to get a double kill and get his hypercharge portals up. For the first time in this game, we had full control, and I wasn't planning on losing it. Once I got back into the action, it was really hard for our opponents to move up. Anytime my teammates would take damage, I would just heal them back to full, and they would keep chipping away at them. This hold was actually so strong that we managed to win the first game. But against good players, I knew that this second game was going to be even harder than the first. I started out a little bit more conservatively this time. I didn't want to feed immediately. But as expected, they do get the early control. A little bit later, I accidentally get pulled in by the Frank and end up going down. This game is definitely not looking as good as the first one. That being said, we did manage to get our first set of Gray portals down, which would help us out a lot. I managed to use the portals to get a nice sneaky double kill and push the Gus back. This allowed us to get a good amount of control and start regaining our zone percentage to where it needs to be. I see the Frank pop his hypercharge here and decide to pull back until I can safely go back in using the Gray portal. And even though I went down there, I made the enemies use enough ammo for my Gray to get another double kill. Then it was time to go ham. We managed to win the game, and when I was checking profiles afterwards, I found that our opponents were really good. One of which was a guy named Nice Shot, which I had never heard before, but he's got a sick profile, so GG's to you. After that win, we were finally on to the last stretch of this push. Legendary. This was going to be by far the longest and hardest portion of the push, being that we would no longer get rank boost, and since we were in a full party, we would get less rank per game. We had a couple more close games, like this one in Bounty, where we barely managed to hang on. But ultimately, we were winning, so I was happy to continue the push. Now, if I were to give you every single game in this push, this video would be like 3 hours long, so I'm just gonna speedrun the next couple. In the next Bounty game, I was able to get some sick jukes and pick up this triple kill. Then, we had a pretty textbook game of double swoosh, another game on dueling beetles, this time on Brawl TV, followed up by quick wins on sneaky fields and pinball dreams. And eventually, we got back around to that heist game that I foreshadowed earlier. The draft was not looking good for us, but we were gonna try our best. And it looked like our best was gonna be good enough, because we ended up winning this game too. We played a few more games before ending the livestream at Legendary 3 with a record of 36-1. At this point, I was about 4 hours into this push, and we all needed a little bit of a break. But we came back to it later that night. The rest of this push was done off stream, and let me just tell you, it was a grind. Now that we were in Legendary 3, we were getting less than 50 rank every win, sometimes even getting as low as 15. But as long as we weren't losing, we were still slowly getting closer to our goal. Emphasis on the not losing part. Our next map we get Gold Arm Gulch. Not the best map for us, but not the worst either. The opponents ended up drafting a Leon, Brock, and Pearl into our Juju, Gene, and Doug. This could end up causing problems for us if Brock is able to open up the map. We start off by doing our usual strategy of keeping everyone fully healed while we charge our supers. And this strategy actually worked, and we won the first game 2-0. But in the second game, our opponents did a much better job of spreading out and keeping us very low on HP. Eventually, they managed to get a pick-off and take the round. But in the next one, I was able to get this nice sneaky kill on the Pearl, giving us the win. Unfortunately though, in the last round, our opponents played really well and managed to win this late game 3v3. This last game is going to be for all the marbles, and boy was it close. I start off by trading my life for Brock's, leaving my teammates in a 2v2, which they then narrowly lose. This means that if we lose just one more round, we lose the whole game. In the next round, you can tell our opponents are really thirsty for that win, but through all the chaos, we managed to get a nice gene pull on the Pearl and win round 2. This is it, one of our closest games yet, and if we lose this next round, we're gonna lose a lot of rank. And in our very last round, when it mattered the most, we made one of our worst plays ever. Leon snuck up on the Gene with his invis, and I walked right into a hypercharged Pearl super, giving them the win. We ended up losing a painful 142 rank, setting us back quite a few games, and setting our new record to 44-2. But we were only 400 rank away from hitting Masters, and we didn't want to give up for the day. So we ended up clawing our way back, winning the next 4 games, 3 of which were all on Ring of Fire. Once we started getting closer and closer to Masters, my teammates decided to try and troll me. Go the Barry.
Hank.
Don't go Hank. You don't need to go Hank.
I'm thinking Rico. Hank is good into that.
Thankfully, I convinced him not to go Hank, but like, how is this a real draft in a Masters lobby? We're able to easily win this game, putting us less than 50 points away from hitting Masters. Those were decent players picking Tick and Gray, by the way. We play another gym grab game, which only gives me 15 rank, and I'm thinking surely this next game will be the last one, right? We queue up into Knockout, and the opponents draft pretty well. But by this point, we kinda know how this goes. We managed to win the first game and have both of our hypercharges ready for the second one. And honestly, in this round, my teammates do most of the work. I'm just kinda sitting back and watching. In the next game, we get a little bit too comfortable, make a couple stupid mistakes, and end up losing the second set. This is it, potentially the final game, and it's gonna come down to Knockout once again. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, the Piper on the other team is actually pro player Tyrant, with a total approximate winnings of over $170,000. So we were basically playing in the World Championships.
Play. Great reserving of the gadget there from Tyrant, spinning as well, giving the Protesto.
Okay, you've gotta be kidding me now. Only 25 points for that game? You're leaving me 8 points away after that? Unfortunately, that's the reality that I was in. So, I had to get one more win. And after lucking out by getting Snake Prairie for our final map, we finally did it. We got Masters using only Doug. And there you have it, Masters rank with Doug. Honestly, if you'd have told me 5.5 hours ago that I would already be in Masters, I probably wouldn't have believed you. What a journey it's been. From those easy bot games back in Bronze, to those clutch moments we had to pull off in Legendary. It's safe to say that this push tested my patience, determination, and my love for Doug. I want to give another huge shout out to Vic and Sins for pushing with me for a couple hours today. If you did enjoy this grind as much as I did, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe for more epic challenges, and let me know in the comments below what brawler you want to see me push next.